Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today I'm going to be talking about the new enlist mechanic from Dominaria United. I'm going to be going over exactly how this mechanic works and a few example scenarios that I think might be important to be familiar with. Ready? Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is pull up the comprehensive rules definition for enlist. This is because this happens to be one of those situations where the comprehensive rules definition happens to differ a little bit from what it says in the reminder text. In order to make sure everybody's on the same page, the reminder text on the card actually has absolutely no game significance whatsoever. It's only there to help people remember how the mechanic works. But if we're dealing with rules questions that might depend specifically on the exact wording that's involved, then the definitive source is the one in the comprehensive rules. So let's take a look here and we'll see exactly how this is worded. Right out of the gate, you can see a couple of really interesting things. First of all, you can see the answer to a question that I get a lot, which is how this mechanic works with haste. It's not really immediately obvious whether a creature that has haste is going to have summoning sickness and just not be affected by it, or whether it doesn't have summoning sickness at all. And actually, it turns out that there is not a definitive answer to this question because summoning sickness isn't defined rigorously anywhere in the comprehensive rules. It's just a colloquial term that players use to describe this rule. So with that being the case, we don't have to worry at all about whether a creature with haste does or does not actually physically have summoning sickness because the wording in the comprehensive rules makes the answer to this question very clear. You can tap the haste creature to enlist on the turn the haste creature enters the battlefield. It's also very clear that you can tap a vigilance creature with enlist, as long as you're not attacking with it. Both the card and the comprehensive rules agree on this point that you cannot tap a creature that's attacking in order to pay an enlist cost. Now, let's take a look at another question that everybody has been asking, which is it possible to respond to enlisting? And the answer to that question is a little bit, well, it depends on exactly what you mean by respond to enlisting. So if you take a look at how enlist functions, you can see that the tapping another creature part happens at the same time as you're declaring the attacks. And so in that sense, it's not possible to respond to naming a creature that you're enlisting. There's no point in time in between when you say that you're tapping this specific creature and when it actually becomes tapped and is enlisted by the attacking creature. There's no point in between those two times where a player would have the opportunity to cast a spell or activate an ability. However, if you notice, what enlist says in the comprehensive rules is that when you tap the creature this way, that's when you get +X+0. And the use of the word when indicates that this counts as a triggered ability, which means that it would go on the stack and you could respond to it just like any other kind of triggered ability. And so what that means is that it is possible to respond to that part of the enlist. So it would be possible for you to play a spell that would increase or decrease the tapped creature's power or toughness, and thereby increase or decrease the +X+0 that the attacking creature would be able to get. Now, another thing that you might be interested in is whether you could use like a Doomblade or something to kill the creature that they enlisted and stop the person from getting a bonus that way. And unfortunately, that trick does not work out. And the reason for that is because anytime the game needs information about a specific object, then it can still look at the object's last known information, in this case, what the power of that creature was immediately before it left the battlefield, and it can have access to that information and use that in order to determine what the effect is going to be. So if you were to Doomblade something that got enlisted, then the rest of the enlist ability would work entirely normal. Obviously, if you Doombladed the attacking creature, then it wouldn't be around on the battlefield anymore to get +X+0. So that'd be another really good way to go. And so for the final scenario that I had in mind, I want to kind of mash together the last few that we've been talking about. Let's say that Amy attacks with a creature that has enlist, and she enlists grizzly bears. And then in response to the +X+0, Nick would play a Dismember against the grizzly bears. What would happen to Amy's creature? And so in this case, we're going to have to determine what the +X+0 is going to be. And bearing in mind what I just talked about, even though the grizzly bears is not in play anymore, we still do have access to its last known information. And so that's what the game is going to use when it's determining what the +X+0 should be. Now, at the last point in time when the grizzly bears was on the battlefield, its power was actually -3 because the Dismember was giving it -5/-5. And so with that being the case, it kind of looks like the attacking creature might be getting -3/-0 instead of plus anything. And it turns out that's actually not the case. And the reason is because if you have a calculation that uses a negative number to determine the result of an effect, such as, for example, what the plus x plus 0 is going to be, then you cannot use a negative number in there. You would just use 0 instead. And so what that means is that if you dismember the grizzly bears in response to the enlist trigger, then the enlist trigger is going to end up giving plus 0 instead of subtracting anything from the creature's power. And it's a good thing that it works that way, because if you notice, the enlist ability does not make it optional as to whether or not you get the plus x plus 0. So once you say that you're enlisting a specific creature, then that's the one that you're doing, and you're going to be getting that creature's power added to you whether you like it or not. Fortunately, this rule here prevents you from ending up in an embarrassing situation like this, where you would actually be subtracting from your original creature's power. The worst case scenario is that you just don't get any bonus whatsoever. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.